So, welcome to the first episode of the Easy PT podcast. We are super excited to have George from the jungle here today with us. George is a longtime friend, basically like a family member to me. He's been coaching my mother. He's been coaching me over the span of the last 7 years. So, just super excited to have you here, George.
Thanks for having me.
George, so tell us a little bit about your childhood, your journey and how you've become George of the Jungle here today.
Sure. So I've always been active. I definitely gave my parents a run for their money because they could never keep me still. I was always climbing like those 7 foot privacy fences at the age of like 4. And the whole George Jungle kind of stems a lot from that. I was always trying to find different things I was able to do, whether it's outside or in my household, jumping around, playing around, climbing the inside of door frames and things like that. But I played football growing up, and all through Pop Warner, which is like the minor leagues, of the township, through high school, and I actually ended up stop playing going into my senior year, which is like supposed to be like the highlight year. But throughout football, I got roughly 5 concussions, 5 or 6 concussions throughout playing the sport. Um, and it just got to a point where it just wasn't worth it anymore. Um, when you're going for all the testing and things like that, it kind of puts in perspective, your body, what the capabilities of, are of your body. Um, and it just, I was being used as a wrecking ball, for all those big hitting plays. And it just, I need to treat my body with some respect. Um, so I stopped doing that going into my senior year, and I filled my time with other activities. But I caught a lot of hate for doing that. Fast forward to college, I went to school originally for a baking and pastry degree, and decided to pivot and change to business management. And throughout college, you have your fun when you're in college. You're running around, you're partying it up, and I, from a psychological standpoint, I kept hitting these points of, I don't want to necessarily deem it as depression, but just a lot of lows, um, where it created a lot of self reflection for myself, to where I kind of started giving myself like 90 days of like probation or sobriety, to so to speak, where it's like I'll cut myself off from drinking and partying and you know chasing females and things of that nature, to where I was able to really dial it into my studies. And I became um very I needed some form of external release, because I buried myself in all these books. And I really started picking up lifting, um again, prior to my high school lifts. And it created that balance where it's like, okay, now I have this external outlet to really focus on me, myself, my health, which I wasn't doing through school. And it started getting me back on track with my academics. I was able to graduate with a 3.3. And it's there was a lot of highs and lows, to where I almost couldn't have had that, to a point where, just because I had those drops in my grades, it prevented me from me being able to go after my MBA, to do my 4+1, which was like the first like true struggle that I had with realizing that, like, I'm going down the wrong path. How am I able to pivot and steer myself back into the direction I want to go? And then over the last couple of years, I'm 31, just to kind of throw that in there, just to kind of give you guys a point of reference. Over the last 10 years, I went from, working in like the pharmaceutical industry, and realizing like I've never been about, drugs and, pharmaceuticals of all that nature. And taking the holistic approach is what I've always done. So like, it just wasn't the right field for myself. The money was lucrative, don't get me wrong, but the passion was behind it. And and it reflected in me being able to do the job, my capacity of being able to do all of it. And I realized that I've loved moving. Moving was always like a cure for my anxieties and things of that nature. to a point where it's like, how come I never tried putting all my eggs in this basket and just, take that leap and really try to pursue, going full-fledged into being a trainer. I received my certification when I was in college, but I did nothing with it. I was working for, Whole Foods back in the day, and the company was really, really great for me. Um, but I figured, I'm a trainer. What am I going to really do with it? It wasn't really about that side hustle at that point in my life. Um, I still was just trying to figure out the direction I wanted to go in, and what that path was going to look like, and where I was going to, end up. And it's changed the way how I've been thinking about, you know, who I am, where I want to be, and where do I want to go. Because you can't just live each day by day expecting things to change if you're never planning for things to change. And that's kind of where I am at this point in my life. My business has changed drastically over the last year. Um, and how I'm setting myself up for success moving forward is looking very different than how it has over the last 5 years.
Wow. Wow. What an incredible story. So, you've told us a little bit about the struggles of, before your, opening up the jungle and such, but tell us about the entrepreneurial side and the
Uh,
successes of the past couple of years, because, um, I really appreciate that you show us sort of both sides of the coin. A lot of times people only talk about, the highs. But
sure.
that was a great way to kick it off. Let's hear about a lot of the wins that we've had at the jungle over the last number of years.
The wins or the losses.
Well,
Um, so it's forever changing, right? Being an entrepreneur definitely is, there's risk. It's, that's what it's all about. You got to risk it to get the biscuit. And there's a lot of time, like a lot of unseen things, to the world that people don't understand really that goes into, being an entrepreneur. And there's a lot of self-doubts that go with it. But on the other side of it too, I was able to break 100K in my first year of business. And like for me, that was one of my goals. So like from a monetary standpoint, that's great because your clients and the monetary value of what you accumulate at the end of the year are directly related to where the more money you're making, the more impact you're also having on the people around you. And there's the hours or I should say are gruesome, to some extent, because you kind of have to figure out what you need to do to be able to make ends meet at the end of every month. Because just to kind of give people a little bit of context, I built the jungle, all right, 4 years ago. We just had our anniversary, June 3rd. But it originally started out as a personal training studio. Over the last year through the pandemic, things had to kind of pivot, shift, and change where our lease was coming to an end, and as we were looking for other places to be able to move into, as going into April of last year when COVID was really ramping up, we made the conscious decision. My fiance and I made the conscious decision to not pull the trigger and get ourselves buried into a position where we don't know what the outcome could potentially be. There's a lot of uncertainty last year. um, but while we had the studio, there's 12, 14, 16-hour days that you're really putting in just to be able to make sure that you're able to make your rent and be able to try to collect somewhat of an income at the end of the day. After it took me 3 years before I actually started to pay myself for my business, because all my money kept going into reinvesting it into making sure that we were able to make the facility a little bit more aesthetic, making sure that everything was always clean, sanitized, making sure that we always had like the latest gear that was coming out, while also being able to keep our household afloat. There's a lot of different things to be able to juggle, and never knowing whether or not someone's going to stick with you for a month or 2 months or 3 months, or just like your mother, for example. When I started working with your mother, it's been almost, I think, 5 years that I've been working with her, right? Some people, I've some clients that have been with me because of loyalty or because of they still need me in their life in some certain capacity. um Definitely builds to like the highs of being in this specific field. But also people don't see how much time you're putting into your website, or trying to figure out marketing, or trying to figure out like, oh my gosh, I had like a really big sale. I feel like I'm on cloud nine, and then the next month you make no sales. It's definitely a roller coaster, to say the least.
Yeah, I could totally totally agree with sort of the ups and downs of being a trainer. For me, I was doing some online coaching as well, so I could definitely relate
Sure.
to that. I want to dive deeper into sort of your original vision for the jungle. So when you were first starting out, what did you have in mind, and how do you sort of feel about that? How do you sort of feel about that looking back over the last couple of years?
Sure. It's definitely it's definitely all been a challenge, and the reason why I say that is because, just like, with what happened with COVID, right? There's things that change daily, weekly, monthly when you're trying to figure out how to make a name for yourself. Um, and that even goes down to like what I thought was a fair price point for myself to be able to offer my services. The demographic in which I live isn't able to they don't see the value of what the services are that I'm offering. So it kind of is it's tough between, like, the demographic in which you're targeting, and also being able to have your own philosophy, as well as create a specific niche that's going to target a smaller group of that target market. You kind of put yourself into a position where it's like, what are you able to do to survive? So, anywhere from, like, the fluctuation of sessions to, me becoming too flexible to what my clients wanted in order to be able to reach their goals. Now today I'm very different. I'm very, cutthroat, saying like, this is what I offer. This is my style of training. I'm confident that my style of training is able to benefit you and what you're trying to get out of my services. There's no more flexibility where it's like, oh, you're interested in if it fits your macros, or, you're a vegan, or, you want to eat paleo. Like, there's no flexibility. It's, you're going to follow some sort of discipline, and you're going to become consistent to it. And when it comes down to how you're training, it's going to be directly reflected to that too. um, when i when I first was opening up the studio, I had this thing painted on the wall. It said in chalk, it said, what is your obstacle? And that was the premise of the jungle. It was supposed to be a functional training obstacle course based facility. That was my original vision of it, because it plays in theme with George Jungle. It teaches people to be able to move dynamic, and to strength train and to functionally train in a more dynamic fashion, to where they're actually able to synchronize and recruit more muscles to be able to move. And that's kind of the whole goal. And that philosophy still hasn't changed for how I believe people need to be able to train. But it's, what path do we take to really get to that goal of being able to move dynamic, to be able to move safely, and then to be able to reap the rewards of being able to go and swing from monkey bars and things of that nature. So I kind of put myself into this position where it was such a small, pool. My niche was just so small, and I wasn't getting any people coming through the doors. And that's what really made me figure out that, like, this isn't the market here. It may be what I like to do, but right now I already signed my lease for over a year, and I need to be able to make money. So how am I able to market and advertise myself? Because I was getting feedback that people were afraid of me and my style of training, and that's not good feedback. So I really started to pivot and started focusing on functional training and corrective exercise, because you realize that every single person that walks through the door doesn't move by the status of, we'll just say, perfect movement, right? And when you start incorporating different screenings, like the functional movement screen, just to kind of use that, you really dissect the body, and you're able to see how people really aren't symmetrical. And if someone isn't symmetrical, for layman's terms, we're just going to say it increases their risk of becoming injured. So the really cool thing about the FMS is that it shows the progression of how we need to work with our clients. And once I started pitching myself as being, the personal trainer that focuses on functional training, instead of everyone that's on the latest fad of, high intensity training, or, you know, I don't know, other things that are out there. My business started to pick up, which was really great. But there's always been this lingering passion that I have for people that come in that need either prehab or some form of post rehabilitative work, because most people can benefit from doing the little things to help them to be able to do the big things, but as well as being able to find and work with people who physically need your help is very different than someone that's coming in to say, hey, I want to lose a few pounds and tone up, you know. So from a personal standpoint, like my love and my passion really comes down to working with people that actually need my assistance because they want to change the markers that they have from doing blood tests. For, you know, they want to reduce their cortisol or triglycerides, or they're diabetic, or you know, someone that's experienced some form of trauma or accident, something that you know they were unaware of it, that was even happening, and now they all of a sudden they have this yearn for health and they want to adopt this new lifestyle. Like those are the people that I care about, because they, and not to say I don't care about my other clients that just want to get a kick-ass workout in, but there's a difference in someone's need to have you in their life. And you know, sometimes they're in your life, just like I was saying before, they're in your life for a month, they're in your life for half a year or a year or a couple of years. And it's definitely changed the way how I train and the way how I run my business and how I market myself. And now currently, ever since my studio, you know, we didn't reopen the studio, I've been a mobile trainer. So that was my big pivot from, you know, everything happening with COVID. Was I went immediately to doing virtual training. I didn't skip a beat. Forcing everybody to download Zoom just like this, and you know, to really try to focus on getting as many weights as they were able to, and as well as just doing some body weight assisted stuff. And then once it was, you know, quote unquote safe enough to start training people outside and becoming mobile. And the best part about being mobile is that now I don't have that overhead every single month of having that studio. So there's some trade-offs. There's definitely some pros and cons that are associated with having a studio where it's a physical location and I have more stuff with me versus what I'm able to fit in my car, or my truck, I should say. Um, but both of them have their pros, both of them have their cons, and it's just, I'm at this point where, you know, I'm still able to have the impact that I want to be able to have, while I'm also shifting and changing my own philosophy to now gear up and to be able to work with the demographic that I really want to work with.
Yeah, that's great. It's all great stuff. So I guess one of the next questions I have for you is, you talk about, you know, a lot of different types of clients, patients, et cetera, that have injuries. What types of injuries were you seeing most commonly? And how have those sorts of experiences changed your mindset when you approach an athlete, for example? So just to
Sure.
rephrase, you know, yeah, just to rephrase, like, you know, what kinds of injuries do you see in people that are hurting, and how do you translate that philosophy to people that aren't?
Sure. So just to be as specific as humanly possible. So a lot of the men that I train, which I have, majority of my clientele is definitely female driven, but specifically the middle aged men that I train, they have no glutes at all. And what I've attributed to that is that if there's no glutes, it's usually a direct result of why they're having back pain. So to kind of sum it up, you know, back pain is one of the big things I see when it comes down to men, specifically men. And the first thing that I try to address is, are their glutes active or underactive? And you know, what are we able to do to re-engage the right muscle sequencing to where it's alleviating some back pain without treating the area, right? It's just trying to give somebody, it's structuring and programming their workouts efficiently to where they're able to develop a strong glute, you know, we'll just say glute muscles, right? Because there's more than one. Um, and seeing whether or not the pain is the same, if it's different, or if it's improvement, if it's improving, you know, better, worse, or same is what I always ask. For the female population, a lot of knee issues. A lot of times it's the inside the medial compartment of the knee that I usually see. And you know, it really just kind of comes down to figuring out, you know, are they collapsing at the knees? Are they having issues at the hip? Are they having hangups at the bottom of their feet? And just kind of working up the kinetic chain to see how I'm able to structure the workouts to be efficient to where it starts reducing, you know, that type of, you know, discomfort that the person is feeling.
That's awesome. So That's great. And so you work with a lot of high impact athletes. I've seen you work with professional athletes as well. So what do you tell these athletes who are constantly, throwing their bodies around, super dynamic, but also trying to prevent these injuries from happening? What should people do to prevent injuries?
Sure. The 50% rule is what I like to call it. All right. And so basically for every time limit of training, half of that needs to be dedicated to the recovery. So if you train for an hour, right, your recovery sequencing should last roughly about 30 minutes. And now it's not to say you need to be sitting and stretching for 30 minutes, but it's an accumulation, right? So that means that your pre-warm up work and your cool down work, can either be 15 minutes apart, a piece, 5 minutes of a warm up if you feel like that's ample enough for you to be able to move during your activity. Or for like myself, like I'm really big into like gua sha or Gratzdin and cupping and those types of like soft tissue work, between that, like foam rolling, things of that nature, and even like taking an ice bath or an Epsom salt bath. That's all that time adds up to making sure that you're trying to bring your body back down to where it's relaxed and it's in the state of less tension. Because if you think about exercising, when you're pumping iron, right, you're putting tension into the muscles. Now your job afterwards is to take the tension out of the muscles. The tension is designed to break down that tissue, or to be able to build strength, or to develop the sequencing for more explosive movements. But now you need to calm down that central nervous system and allow your body to restore, as well as sleep, right? So sleep is part of that continuum. It's not part of my 50% rule per se, but I used to be one of those individuals that would only sleep for 4.5, 5 hours, because I wanted to start my day, and I had this mentality where it's like, if I want to be successful, I need to, shorten my sleep and have longer work days, when it's ass backwards. It's, sleep comes first. It's like the first thing that you need to be able to shift and adjust. And ever since I got this Whoop, this is my shameless plug. Yeah,
You
maybe Whoop
you
gang.
you put me on it. You put me on
That's
it.
right. It definitely puts things in perspective about your strain and the things that are necessary for you to take into account when you're trying to recover. And it's amazing having this little apparatus create long-term change in real life. And sleep is a huge component of it.
So would you
But
say that now you're no longer sleeping 4 hours a day? Now you're sort of hitting your recoveries in the green zone and such.
no shot, no shot. Yeah, so it's really interesting. For I like having my coffee, and I actually go through withdrawals if I miss my coffee. I start getting that headache, and it's amazing to see the difference, though, because the days in which I drink coffee, I'll never hit green. Or same thing with alcohol. If I have one drink, I'll never hit green, and I know it for a
Wow.
fact. So every time I make that conscious choice of either having a coffee or drinking alcohol, I know that my body, there's clearly some form of adverse reaction that's happening within my body, maybe metabolic, or from a standpoint of just being able to get into that deep enough sleep. It's amazing to see how all of these external factors have this internal change, and it's in real life. It's something as simple as a cup of coffee. But now, on average, I sleep between 7 and 8 hours. And again, though, my first client's at 5 o'clock in the morning, so I work backwards, right? So I try to start winding down by 9 o'clock, and it's tough. It's definitely tough. You miss out on like those nights of going out and staying up late, excuse me, cuddling on the couch, watching a movie. But it's a choice that I'm making, because I know that I will feel like crap the next day if I don't do what I know I need to be able to do to recover for myself.
Yeah. So being a trainer, running your own business, entrepreneurship, these are really hard things, and you have to sacrifice, a lot of social hours, sometimes sleep, etc. So, but I also feel like you mentioned that it's like a misconception that sleeping less is going to make you more productive, or that sort of thing. So my question for you is, what are some misconceptions that you're seeing in the personal training field, and how can we try to change that narrative from, what people think they should be doing to what they should, scientifically be doing?
Sure. So, I mean, the biggest thing that speaks out to me is the mentality: no pain, no gain, right? And like it really rubs me the wrong way because I even have clients that will like be doing something. They'll be like, no pain, no gain. And I'm like, no, that's not where you need to be, thinking. And it's, you know, pain is a response to a negative stimulus, right? And it's your body communicating with you. And I used to compete in bodybuilding back in the day, right? So I used to get up on stage in my little speedo, and I loved it. All eyes on me. And I did anything and everything to be able to cut weight. Um, and I jeopardized my own health to be able to make sure that I looked my best. And I
You
did
were
these.
shredded. You were
I
shredded.
dude, I was like 2.5, 3% body fat. It was nuts. Um, but there's a lot of unhealthy things you need to be able to do, to be able to maintain that and to be able, I was running on a treadmill with, a full garbage bag suit on, right? And if you look up the articles on what type of strain that does to the heart, a lot of people have had strokes or heart attacks. Um, and it's there's like that mentality where it's like you need to punish yourself to be able to get where you want to go, or there needs to be sacrifice in order for me to reap the reward. Is there's a psychological component that's not spoken about and it's not talked about, because there's a reason why people feel like they need to sacrifice something to be able to get something good. And I think a lot of it comes from how we're brought up, right? It's like, if anything good in life, requires sacrifice. And it's sure, but within the realm of safety. And when your body is telling you, stop, or this is hurting, you need to really you need to take those internal cues and you really try to figure out what's going on. And that's the way how you're able to last in the long game of life, right? Because otherwise you're going to burn out, or you're going to train to a point of injury, and then next thing you're not going to be able to train, or you're not going to be able to do what you love for X amount of time. And again, the psychological factor that plays into that is truly detrimental, because to go back to when I was playing high school football and I started getting those concussions, I was wearing that cowboy collar. Do you know what that is?
No.
It goes underneath the shoulder pads. It has a fin so that your helmet can't get snapped back.
Okay.
So after I would be out for 4 to 6 weeks, or however long I was able to finally pass the concussion test, I would literally come back yoked up, ready to just take off some people's heads, and then end up getting another concussion. And like, because I missed so much time of being able to play, of playing time, in my head I was like, I have to mask this injury in some way, shape, or form so that I'm able to play the season now. And it's like things like that in your life, you don't realize, but they have long-term effects. And the mentality, no pain, no gain. I just want to play my sport. I just want to, keep lifting. What you end up doing is just end up wearing your body out faster. And it's, this generation right now is really, it's kind of like a double-edged sword, because like you see a lot of people now talking more about, this functional range conditioning type of stuff where you're putting mobility back in the joints, which is amazing. But then on the other side of it too, you have this voice of people just screaming out, you have to keep training, you have to keep cutting calories, you have to keep punishing yourself to be able to reap all these rewards. If you want to be a social media influencer, or if you want to be able to have these aesthetic gains, you need to be able to do X, Y, and Z, and all three of them are terrible for your health. So that's probably the first thing that I would probably say. And then the kind of going back into it is training at 100%. A lot of my meathead friends, and I don't mean to insult them, but I do mean to insult them. They just want to lift as heavy as humanly possible all the time. And I am a huge advocate of strength training. That is, I make everybody strength train, but it's how you're programming that is where you see the wins, right? You're not going to see the wins when you're training at 100% every single day. You have to build in that 100% day where you're maxing out, after a sequence of being able to train at lows, being able to build to 70%, for 3 to let's just say 6 reps, and being able to be comfortable and confident that that type of training style will be able to allow you to train at 100% on that one day when you're actually trying to test for it. And that's what periodization is all about, right? Being able to, over a duration of time, be able to get stronger, faster, more agile, more explosive, And people don't realize that it's it's not a short race, right? It's people over time. Let's just use like obesity as a unit of measure. People will gain weight over 3 5 years, right? Or even we'll just even use COVID, right? For example, like a lot of people over the last year put on what they're saying, and I hate to say it, like they're COVID 15 or something like that. And it's it took time for them to be able to put on that weight. And now you're expecting that you're going to be able to lose all that weight in 2 months, 3 months. It doesn't work that way. You put it on for a year, you should take your time taking it off so you're not jeopardizing your health. And people think that they immediately need to stop all the habits that they've been doing, whether it's going out partying, drinking, and they need to immediately cut it all off, and they need to train 7 days a week, for an hour, hour and a half long. You know, it doesn't get you where you need to be. People think that they're going to get immediate success doing that. Sure, over a duration of time in a deficit, consistency over intensity. Sure, we'll end up reaping the rewards, but again, it comes down to the psychology of individuals. It's like what's getting them to that point where they feel like they need to stop their lifestyle, hard stop to their lifestyle, and then put 110% into abusing themselves every single day without giving themselves ample time to be able to recover.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. So let's talk a little bit about the psychology of these people, healthy, injured, whatever the case is. How does mental health play a role into this entire picture?
It's all of it. It's all of it. Because think about it, right? What's going to get you to work out that day? Is it going to be um, how much will it's going to be how much willpower you have to be able to attribute to your workouts, or making sure that you're able to stay on track with how you choose to be able to eat consistently. We're affected every single day by the world around us. We're affected every single day by what we eat, but we're also affected every single day by what we say to ourselves. And I can tell myself, I'm going to get my workout in after my long day of training my clients. And throughout the course of the day, my willpower is going to get diminished, diminished, diminished. And then I'm going to get to a point where I'm like, I need to respect my body. I need to take this off day. But then the conversation that I start having with myself after taking that off day is, you're a piece of shit. You could have done 30 minutes. You could have done this, you could have done that. And it's finding that balance where you're able to speak nicely to yourself and feel guilt free in your choices, because the big picture is where you want to be. That long-term goal is where you want to be. Like, I know, like yesterday, for example, like I had a long day, right? And I said to myself, I'm going to get this workout in, and I felt disgusting. I needed a shower. I knew if I went home to shower, I wasn't going to come back out. But I made that choice to actually to take the L for the day and to go home and actually get a good meal in, because aside from my long days, I was malnourished for the day. I was dehydrated also. And I can have this mentality, like I was saying before, of like, just suck it up and just give it 100%. But there's again consequences that follow that. Like today, I feel good. I looked at the Whoop. I'm at like 92% recovered, and like clearly, like I listened to my body, and now I feel good today. So I have my schedule is a little bit lighter today, and I'm like, all right. So like after we're done doing this, like I have another hour before my next client. I'm able to go out. I'm able to crush something, shower, and like not be so stressed out about it. And I feel good about it. And again, last night I may not have had the nicest conversation with myself, but now like here it's like hindsight's 2020. You give it a little bit of time, you look back and you're like, I did make the right decision, and I own it. And I try to coach that to my clients. I try to make them realize that it's they want to see results immediately for however long they hire me for. So like I sell packages, right? And if they hire me for a month or for 2 months, they want to see immediate results in that duration of time. First thing I say to somebody is, if you're seeing me once a week, which I usually don't do that with people, but if you're seeing me even twice a week, like you need to do another 2 days of something. And we have a dialogue about what their life really looks like. And we figure out what form of activity they're able to do within those additional 2 days. It looks very different for every single person. But the whole goal is to be able to get somebody moving enough and feel good, enough to be able to have long-term results instead of short-term success.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. And so, in terms of long-term success, we know nutrition plays a massive role into this. Uh, can you talk about what people at home can be doing to sort of taking that take that first step in changing their movement habits and their nutrition habits so that they can set themselves up for long-term success?
Sure. So my mentality is a little bit different, and I actually want to share my fiance's mentality on her approach, Alex. So before she even lets people work out, like actually lift, she she builds the foundation um, with get them getting their steps in. And it's the reason why I want to talk about this versus my approach is because like this, her approach works with everybody. Like it works very well with the general public, and it's honestly it's like it should be like a public health announcement, to where it's if you're not able to give yourself the time to be able to get in steps throughout the course of the day, and we're not talking about that 10K a day stuff, right? So like if you're already someone that's sedentary on average gets less than 3,000 steps a day. If you're
Wow.
somebody that gets less than 3,000 steps a day, your goal should be 3,001, right? You want to get yourself out of that position of being quote unquote sedentary. Um, and if you're able to do 3,000 or 4,000, aim for 5,000. You want to make it very realistic. You want to set up SMART goals, right? So that things are actually attainable in a timely fashion. Um, and it's critical because at this point in time, we're able to gauge whether or not a client is going to be committed to an actual program themselves. If you can't get out and take that time to be able to walk, it's like what are you really striving for? And now let's even turn this to people who don't have the ability to walk. It's again, it's a dialogue that needs to be able to be had. Whether it's with your healthcare provider or if you decide to hire a trainer, it's like what are you able to do, and what's something consistent that we're able to put into your daily life to where that you're going to get an adequate form of movement, right? So like, we'll take your mother for example, and when I've trained her for a very long time, I've trained her for 7 days in a row before. We've gone through a lot of different sequencing on how we work together, and up until recently, I kept telling her that I want you to walk your stairs, to climb your stairs. Um, and just to give people again a little bit of context, that was something that would be very, very challenging for your mother, right? To be able to
So,
climb stairs.
so George, could you give people a little bit of context on her story? I could talk about her story, and I've shared it on YouTube, and she shares it on her Instagram. But you've been a huge part of not only her journey but my journey, and I feel like she's been a part of your journey as well. So, could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, of course. So when I met your mother, she was wheelchair bound. And this is when I used to work at a commercial gym that was attached to a rehab facility. And at that point in time, my goals were to become a physical therapist prior to me opening up my studio. And again, I've made some changes in my life, and excuse me, um, and it changed the course of my life. And when I met your mother, I literally was doing aqua therapy with her because she wasn't able to do land-based. Excuse me, she wasn't able to do land-based exercises or activities, and that was probably my first time ever working with somebody that was so regressed. And again, like I told you, like this is my passion because like now it's somebody that's looking to a physical therapist and their quote unquote aid, right, for some sense of direction. And like I learned so much with doing my observation hours in that moment. Um, to a point where it's like, okay, like how are we, like what muscles do we need to start synchronizing to be able to bring somebody back to a to to have the basic functioning of being able to walk again. And it was very, very interesting because it pushed me to want to further my education. So like I started taking anatomy and physiology classes at our community college over here to really try to have an understanding of what muscles are being affected and afflicted from people who have strokes or people who have heart attacks or who lose certain you know, abilities to be able to ambulate. And it definitely changed my life. And over time, you know, your mother was able to, you know, stand on her own. Then she was able to take her steps while she was using her canes. And over the course of, so now I believe it's been 7 years since her accident, right?
Yeah.
And you know, I've been blessed to be a part of 5 of them. And you know, I honestly feel like that's when God said that, you know, we were ready for each other, because listen, it was a commitment. It is a commitment.
It's a huge
Um,
one. Yep.
but it's, you know, it was definitely eye opening, and it changed my life for the better. You know, I have a phenomenal relationship with, you know, with your family.
And
And
just for the people at home, George would drive 40 minutes to our house every day to work with my mother. And at that time, I think she was, you know, barely moving her feet, barely wiggling her toes. So just watching, you know,
that's right.
how dedicated George is to his clients.
Yeah,
It's been incredible.
100%. And you know, she actually got to a point where, you know, the rehab clinic that she was at said that she had plateaued.
Yep.
And that was a huge psychological setback. We're talking like 3 months, easily. And you know, we decided to prove everybody wrong. And I'll never forget when your mother took her first, I think it was 9 steps unassisted. Um, and then we'll never forget when she took her 600th step unassisted. And it blew my mind. I mean, this woman literally she defied everything, right? You know, doctors told her that she wouldn't be able to move, as you know, she wouldn't be able to walk again. She was told from, you know, from this institution that, you know, she plateaued, that she won't progress. And then next thing you know, she does the work, and she sucks it up, and she gets up on her 2 feet, and she just walks. It truly was amazing. But to kind of go back to the basic things that people need to do, your mom was very reluctant to do extra stuff that I told her that I wanted her to do. And you know, that came down to me telling her that I want her to walk her stairs once going up and down. And you know, right now she's, you know, working at a different facility. And prior to that, we went back to back for a full month, 7 days straight. And I told her that I need you to walk your stairs every single day. I know that it was within her capacity to be able to do so. It's whether or not she had the commitment and the discipline to be able to do it. And this goes back to our conversation about like the things that people need to be able to do, and from the psychological standpoint, like where they need to be able to actually start to make those long-term changes. Like your mother got to a point where she's like, he's telling me to do this, I need to do this, I can do this. So she did it. That's it, plain and simple. When it comes down to going out and walking, and walking, you know, you're not just going out and walking to prove to yourself that you're able to be disciplined and dedicated to yourself, but you're physically moving the lymphatic system in your body. You're reducing the cortisol from a long stressful day in your body. You're bringing your body back to balance, back to homeostasis, by just doing this one activity that requires the least amount of effort, right? Um, and that's where most people need to be able to start. From a nutrition standpoint, they need to be able to, you know, focus on like how much water they're able to get, that they're able to get in. You know, I personally strive to be able to get a minimum of a gallon of water in. Does it happen every single day? No. I used to force chug water to make sure that I was able to hit it. But that's not a healthy approach, to be able to force chug or to force eat to make sure that you get your calories in. Again, it creates an unhealthy relationship with food. It creates, you know, a level of disordered eating. Um, and so it's just the basics. Like, you know, most people at this point in time should have an understanding what a healthy plate of food should look like. You know, it should, and like, and I know it's kind of silly to talk about like hand sizes, but like some people need like those visual cues where it's like, you know, you should be eating, you know, one size of your fist of protein, or maybe a little bit more. You should be able to have, you know, the relative same size for carbohydrates. You know, you should need to be able to have like the thumb size of fats. You need to be able to have like 2 hand sizes of vegetables with every single meal. You know, it seems like it's so much to take on, but it really is so basic, and it should be taught at every level. And with our ability to have so much access to technology today, it blows my mind when someone says to me, you know, hey George, um, you know, I'm afraid of eating cheesesteaks. All right. And I talked to them about, why are you afraid of eating cheesesteaks? And, meanwhile, someone's goal could be to gain weight, right? Not everyone's goal is to lose weight, but, they have this fear of food. And I say to them, like, you don't need a trainer or a dietitian. You need to be speaking to a therapist about why you're actually afraid of food. And like, this is the beautiful thing about my fiance, chasing after her master's in clinical psych, is because now I've never been so aware of mental health when it comes into people's daily actions and their daily choices. Because remember, like, you make a choice every single day to work out or not to work out. You make a choice every day on what you decide to put into your body. And you decide every single day how you're going to talk to yourself and your relationship with, the things and the people around you, whether it's, my relationship with my cell phone, my relationship with my fiance, my relationship with food. And it really is interesting to see that we just overcomplicate things. We over romanticize everything. And I say that with the utmost respect to people that actually struggle with their mental health. But when I have these conversations with people about, like, why are you having trouble just trying to eat foods that you know are healthy? And it all of a sudden it puts people into a mentality of guilt. It really makes me begin to question it, to wonder, like, what's the internal dialogue that they're having with themselves, like why they're allowing themselves. And I don't want to say allow, like, oh, like, like they should not be permitted to have something. But when people do things over and over and over again, right, it's a behavior. It's no longer like a once in a blue moon kind of thing. Like for myself, like, I don't eat perfectly. I don't work out every single day. Personally, that's not what I do. That's not what I know, that personally is not the best for myself. So I'm not going to do that. Um, and it really is interesting to see people's perceptions and, again, like their internal dialogue when they guilt themselves into, either, missing the workout, or guilting themselves after they missed the workout. And now they decide that the next day they have to punish themselves by doing twice the amount of cardio, or, work out for twice as long. There's this paradigm that needs to get broken.
Yeah, that's great. So you mentioned earlier that people have access to technology, and as we've been working on this platform, Easy PT. Some of you may have known it as Simple before, but what we're working on there is a platform that basically can allow people to work on their movement health, and take control of if they have access to a trainer, they can work with the healthcare professional. If they can't afford it, they have access to some AI technology that'll give them real-time feedback. So tell us what your thoughts are on sort of the Easy PT platform, and where you think we should be trying to help people, and where you think it can best fit in the ecosystem of a trainer and physical therapists and such.
Sure, sure. I mean, it's the application to the general public is one thing versus how a trainer themselves are going to be able to use that type of platform, right? Um, I mean, everybody needs a trainer, in my personal opinion. Everybody needs to have somebody have that point of view and perspective of their body to see how they're moving in time and space. Like, when you're looking at yourself in a mirror, you're only seeing one side of your body. You can turn yourself sideways, but then I'm also turning myself sideways. What am I doing with my neck? I'm now turning my neck. So now the alignment of my spine is now skewed, right? So having something that's able to track your movements is critical. I mean, and the fact that you're able to have that without having to physically have somebody next to you, even shows the accessibility of it, how you're able to reach, our entire population, right? Like everybody should have it. Like, I mean, like I have it on my phone, right? And I think it's pretty awesome to see when, how I'm moving, because so, sometimes I myself, I lean forward a little bit depending on my lifts, or I lean, my back isn't, perfectly neutral. And a lot of times it's because I'm overly fatigued and I need to recognize when I need to slow down or stop. I preach to all my clients, never reinforce a bad movement pattern. Say it one more time. Never reinforce a bad movement pattern, because I see that happen all the time on social media and it kills me. Um, but if I have this rep scheme in my head of, me wanting to hit, let's just say 8 reps, And at 6, my form is becoming compensated, and I mean, I have something giving me, the external feedback. My ego I lost my ego a long time ago. I put the weight down, I step back, and I readdress it. I tell myself I owe 2 to the bank. That's how I get to myself, psyched up to be able to make sure I finish the working load that I'm trying to accomplish. But again, having something tell me in real time and space that, I'm losing it, right, is an easy way for me to stop. Just like how when you experience pain, like once you feel pain, you should stop, right? Um, from a therapeutic standpoint, um, a lot of people don't take what a physical therapist says that, their homework, right? They won't take it and actually do it at home. A lot of times it's laziness, but a lot of times it's also, that person doesn't have the body awareness that's necessary to actually feel good to when they're doing something, or they're not, or if you're lying on your back supine doing a glute bridge and you're looking at your ceiling, you can't look at your form. But if you have something giving you feedback, verbal feedback, right, while you're doing something, it's reinforcing, that you are doing it, so that when a PT gives you something, right, so the rehabilitation phase would be like 15 to quote unquote 30 reps, right, of doing something. You're able to stay in that form, maintain that form, and actually get the movement and, begin to build and help your body get back to where it was without being distracted of, am I am I doing it wrong? Am I having, improper technique? And it definitely solves a lot of those problems. Um, you know, just like everything else, is everything perfect? No. Everything has to be able to adapt to the user that's actually using things like that. But all of it's super impressive.
Yeah, that's great, George. So, and for us, I think our biggest goal is just like you said, have the human touch of a trainer or physical therapist giving sort of the routine that a patient should be doing, and then on their off days when they don't have access to the therapist or the trainer, because it can be very expensive or the insurance might not cover 5 days a week or 7 days a week. Like
Sure.
that's sort of when they can use this technology to make sure they're doing things properly, send the information over to the healthcare professional, or and then basically adjust and make sure that they're staying on track. So it's great, and I definitely want to continue to show you sort of the newer work we've been working on since the last time we've caught up. And so just to sort of wrap things up, I want to ask you if there's any sort of anything that you wish I asked you, or anything specific you want to share with the crowd, so that they can sort of reach all of their health goals. And yeah.
Sure. It's such a loaded question, right? There's so many
Yeah.
ways to kind of go into it. I'll talk on one specific part of it. You can't trust everything you see, and you can't believe everyone that you come in contact with. Um, and one of the biggest things that I want to say grinds my gears, right, is, we're obviously, most of us are on social media, and you see all of these people who aren't qualified to be trainers, or to be posting all these things, and they're showing people improper technique, and um, they should have this level of social responsibility, but there's no one that's reinforcing that type of standard. Personally, for me, like, I love being a trainer. I love the fact that I get to keep people active, and see how it benefits and transforms their lives. um, but it's but think about what you're actually doing, though. Like, a doctor works with people's bodies, right? A therapist works with the movement of people's bodies, right? And you have, like, even someone like a massage therapist needs some form of state licensure to be able to help manipulate somebody's bodies. And now you have people putting their health in somebody's hands, and you're not going to require some form of licensure. Certifications are nice, but that demonstrates some level of education. But I genuinely feel that moving forward, it's kind of like the future of personal training, right? It's like, where do I see it going? And I hope and I believe that there's some possibility of licensure that's necessary to give people this state of permission to actually work with people hands on, and really kind of get into the psyche of why they're doing the things that they do. Like it's not just like one thing where you're going for a massage, and someone's working on trigger points. When you're training someone, you're showing them how to move, and if things always come up, right? On how the body's someone doesn't necessarily feel 100%, and you need to be educated enough to be able to make the appropriate adjustments, but also being able to help somebody in that time, in their moment of need, to be able to troubleshoot. And you need that level of education across the board. And there should be some type of standard for all that. I guess what I want to say to people who are clients, the general population, when you're following all of these people that are out there, take their information with a grain of salt. Do what is right. Do a little bit of due diligence, and figure out whether or not that person has another agenda on why they're telling you what they're telling you or what they're showing you. Right? Use your brain, think critically. And that will make you safer. It'll also educate you to learn how to operate your own body. That's one of the big reasons why I love working with the body. It's like, this is me, this is my body. I should know how to use it, right?
Yeah.
So essentially, that's what I get to do every single day. I get to show people how to use their body and how to transform their body. And I think that's it. Do you have any other questions for me?
So where can people find you, and where can they contact you? How can we train with you? Give us
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So my Instagram handle is gjunglefit. And my website is thejunglenj.com. So even though I'm based in New Jersey, I do offer virtual training, consultations. I do programming, and all my programming is backed with videos of me being able to do and demonstrate the exercises, which that's something I'm actually looking forward to be able to do with EasyPT, right? Is being able to have that algorithm, follow along with me to where my clients are able to also use it, so that I'm able to make sure that they're doing their homework and that they're also benefiting from seeing that they're doing things the right way, and that I'm able to see that they're also doing things the right way.
For those of you at home, you can sign up for any sort of trainer, but I'll tell you, working with George over the last few years, for myself, in terms of gaining weight, cutting weight, back when I was pre-injured and just constantly working on weightlifting and such, it was incredibly helpful. He's extremely knowledgeable, as you can see from this podcast. He has tons of insights and great philosophies on overall health, and not so much the no pain, no gain mentality. So, just huge thank you for being here today. And we're definitely going to get you back on here at some point. Super, super excited for, I guess the last question is, what's next for George?
What's next for George? So I've already this year, I set myself up with New Year's declarations, things that I declare to the world of what I plan on doing. And I've already completed two new certifications, things that are going to align me with what I plan on doing. One of them was my USAW, my United States of America weightlifting certification. Just did my performance enhancement specialization, and my next on my list is my CSCS, so that I'm able to gear up and start working with more individuals that are in the sports industry, because there's a lot of room for injury prevention and being able to strengthen that next generation of athlete.
That's incredible. We're super excited to see the next couple of years for you, George. And thanks for being on.
It's my pleasure. Take care.
All righty. Bye-bye. All right, so hit pause.